Hello, my name is Marcus and welcome to Tabletop Reviews, where I'm at my tabletop. 100%, sure. Today, I'm reviewing a game that was long in the waiting. Back through Kickstarter, obviously, like 90% of my games are. But because of the new VAT and import rules here in Europe, I think it was a European thing, not just a Danish thing, this was very delayed. And then you hear reviewers and you hear other people just generally talking very highly of it. This makes you very excited for it. The game in question is Long Shot the Dice Game. Now, I've heard a lot of good talk about this one, but what do I think? Well, just after I show you how it's played and set up, I'll talk about that. But let's go to the tabletop. Alright, here we are with the game set up for 2 players. Now, there's a few things to bear in mind as you set up the game, but overall it's pretty simple enough. So, start off by placing the central board in the middle. This is the race circuit, where you will also place your horses from 1 to 8. You can put them in any order you want. I like to put them in a straight row here. This is where your horses will race around. You can put your dice next to the board, and then you will have to put out 8 horse cards here. There's a few different sets, and I think you can buy even more than what I have. But it doesn't really matter. The only thing they change is the horse powers that you get if you purchase a horse. Now, next up, you're gonna want to set up the individual player boards. You'll each be receiving this here card, which shows off some of the circles to mark off in the concession stand, and which horses you have a pre-bet on before the race even starts, and then you will each need $12 to start. And that's how you set up the game. There's a variation to the game where you pick up, well, you shuffle the deck and pick 2 cards from the events deck, where there are 3 different things that can happen. There is an alternate action that you can take. The card reads out loud, and then instead of your main actions, you can do that action instead. There is the new rule, which is exactly what it says. It is a new rule to follow in the game. And then there is the event, something that happens at the start of the game, which may alter how you perform some actions or something that happens throughout the game. But those are not necessary to enjoy the game. You now have the base game up. Now let's talk about how you play it. So we'll start off by rolling the dice. And then you have the 8-sided dice, which shows a horse. This horse then moves the amount of steps on the 6-sided dice, either 1, 2 or 3. Then you check the horse card and see if there's which of the other horses have an X on them. Each of these horses move 1 space forward. Now, this is also what determines the bet size on it, because the 1 appears with a lot of X's, the most of all of them, whilst the 8 appears with the least. Therefore, there's a higher likelihood that 1 is in, therefore it doesn't give as much on return, opposite the 8, which gives a high return, but it has low stakes. Then it's time for the individual player's actions. Now, there are 5 actions you can take in the base game. You can either go to the concession stand and cross off one of the circles of the horse that was rolled. And if you get a row or a column, you get to use one of the powers down below. Either you get $7, just straight off the bat. You can move 2 horses backwards by 2 steps, or you can move 1 horse backwards by 3 steps. Though you can never cross the blue line by moving backwards. That is forbidden. You can place a $3 free bet on any horse eligible within the rules. You can do the opposite of moving the horses backwards, moving them forward. 2 horses 2 places, 1 horse 3 places. You can cross off any helmet that you want, or any jacket that you want, or you can simply get a horse for free without paying anything for them. The next up, you can cross off either the hat or the shirt of the rolled horse. Now, this does a few different things. The hat does that when your horse crosses the red line, which is the no bet line, then you can still bet on it. Then you can still place a bet on it if you have crossed off the helmet. The shirt means that you can put a cross on any horse on that horse card. Next up, you can simply place a bet on the rolled horse. A bet from $1, $2 or $3 placed on the horse subtracted from your own personal total. The final thing you can do is you can buy the rolled horse. At the top right of any horse card there is a value. That is the value of the horse, and if you want to buy it, that is what you will have to pay. Pay that, and the horse is yours, and you get some extra earnings if that horse finishes first, second or third. Now there is an alternate thing you can do, and you can use a wild. You have 3 wilds throughout the game, and if you use one of these ones you can do any of the 5 actions on any of the horses instead of it having to be the rolled horse. The person who wins the game is the person who at the end has the most amount of money when you add it all together. So the way you do that is, first you see if any of the horses you might own finished first, second or third. That gives you a money prize. Then any hat and jacket set you have of any horse, both of the same color, you get a $5 bonus for each of those. Then you have your placed bets. You can get that back, or all of the horses has, the bet you place times a number based on if it's finished first, second or third. And if finished within the no bet line, you get your money back. Add all of those up together, and then finally whatever money you might have left after putting all your bets and buying your horses, and those all add up together is your total. The one with the most amount of money is the winner. And there you go, that is how you play the game of Longshot, the dice game. Fairly simple and all, but a few interesting decisions to be made. But that's all for the final thoughts section, which we'll jump to right now. And there you go, that is how you set it up and play it. Now it's time to talk about the game itself and what I think about it. That's the boring part, So I want to start off with gameplay. Last time I did setup, I'm not going to talk about that. You see it. Gameplay. So obviously the main part of it is dice rolling. Just check some dice, see what happens. And when you talk about that, you probably think of Monopoly or something like, or Ludo, right? Roll, move. In those games, it's not good, It takes away from the game. It becomes a very bad thing to happen. For this one, mostly because of its gambling aesthetic, it's which horse is going to win. Oh my god, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. I still don't overly enjoy it, but it definitely makes a lot of thematic sense. And of course, after you roll the dice comes the exciting part, the action selection part. What are you going to do with the 5 possible actions? Now there are some really, really great choices that give you to think about, right? The hat and the shirt, they give you an advantage. But like if you roll the dice and head for this card, this horse, and then it just doesn't get rolled, that's a waste of a turn. But obviously if you cross it over here in the grid, the concession stand, you can get some free actions. But what if those exact ones don't show up? Then it's maybe a waste of a turn. So there's a bit of some choices there. There are definitely some boring choices, let's say that. Buying the horse is a bit of a boring choice until you are like late game, because you're not going to buy the first horse rolled. You're not. It's stupid. Okay, so that's a little bit boring. Betting on a horse, again, at the beginning, you might not put down bets. You already have 2 bets going. Your focus is going to be on those horses and getting those forward. So those are a little boring at the start, and then towards the end they become more interesting and more like, okay, this horse is far along. Am I gonna go for it? Yes. And of course the wilds really are a nice touch. Now the rule is, if you can't do anything with the horse as rules, use the word wild, but you can use it whatever. And I like that. I like that you have this choice to do whatever, but it is limited. So that's a good thing to add. I don't think there's any bad in that one. Sorry about that. My notes. But as I said, it's very lucky. Because then again, number 1 has the highest likelihood of winning. I do not remember number 1 winning. I barely remember 1, 2, and 3 finishing in the top 3. Well, 1 and 2. Those are the most likely to finish in the top 3, and I barely remember it through all of our plays. It's so, for some reason, very often number 6. That's just how it goes. But that just shows how lucky it is. That it doesn't matter that these ones have the best chances. When it is this extremely lucky, that doesn't matter. It just doesn't. So it's very lucky also with dice rolling. And that's where you go, very lucky, you know, your strategy, it doesn't really matter. Because you might be going really well, getting the grid over here, getting some horses, moving those you want, you know, 2 and 2 and whatever. But then 3 lucky dice rolls and number 8 wins. Maybe not 3, but you know what I mean. And that takes something away from it. But there is one thing I have to say about that. It makes so much thematic sense. It's a horse racing game. It's luck, it's circumstances. It makes such a thematic sense. And I think this is a game where they've taken some thematic choices to make it extremely thematic. It's very thematic. But it has lessened the gameplay a little bit for the thematic sense. But that's gameplay. Let's talk about the components in here. So what do we have? We have cards. They're perfectly fine quality. The cards you are not going to be interacting with them too much. A little bit more the horse cards. And they're perfectly fine quality. Of course you can erase from them immediately. That's perfect. So perfectly good quality cards there. The dice, I really like them. They feel cheap, but they don't, a little bit cheap maybe, mass produced, right? But they look great. You have no doubt what you've rolled at any point. It's very visible and they roll very nicely. I haven't had problems flinging them across the table and getting them to roll. So I think the dice are really great. Then of course you have the pens. Meh, it's the best I can say. It's dry erase pens. The erasers work, they work, and the erasers work, and I haven't found anything that sticks to the boards, so that's nice. You know, it works like it should. Roll and write, and you can always reset. And that leads me to the boards, which I think are really good. They're simple. You have the action overview. You have everything where it makes sense. You know, count up here, and it just makes sense where everything is placed on the individual playboards, and the main board, the central board, also just makes sense. It's just an oval. You have audience, and you have little concessions that it makes sense. I think it really makes sense, everything that's there. Artwork looks amazing. It's really nice artwork. So the boards are pretty great. And those are the components. I mean, the components aren't dragging them down. It's perfectly fine. What you interact with all the time throughout the game is fine. You know, you have the dice really good. The boards are pretty good. The pens are pens with the dry erase on it. So it's perfectly fine. It's really good components for this game. So, question is, does it lie to you? Well, no, it doesn't. Anyways, let's talk about it here. 25-minute playtime. I mean, it's very lucky. You could have every single horse moving one step at a time all the way through. That would be a lot more than 25 minutes. But I would say that's a pretty accurate time. I think that's the route where we've played. I think maybe a little bit less actually. I think we lay at like an average of 20 minutes. It goes sometimes pretty fast. So, but not because it's a lie to you. Then you have 14 and up. Well, I would argue 12, 13, 11 maybe even could play this. But I think it's fairly accurate. There's a few things to keep in mind and you should think about. You shouldn't go too young for that. And also you have the gambling aspect of it. So I think 14 up is perfectly fine. 12 and 13 depends on the parents, I think. And then 1 to 8 players. Well, I haven't played it solo. I'm not a big solo player. Sorry about that. But I can definitely see it going to 8. Because it's basically just who rolls the dice. Everybody does the same actions, but in, you know, what turn. So again, like, it could be pretty slow. I mean, some people might not get to roll the dice because it's very lucky, you know. I could see that being a problem with 8 players, but no other obvious problem with being 8 players. Because, I mean, if you're 3 or 4, somebody's going to roll the dice less than the other ones. It's pretty impossible to perfectly hit it. So, not really a huge problem there. So no, I don't think it lies to you at all. In summary, it's a very fun game. Very much, you know, thematically a gambling game, but that thematic touch takes away from a little bit of the gameplay and the components. Some of them are really good, some of them are perfectly fine for what they have to be, and it is honest about its everything. So what is my final score for it? I'm going to give this game an 8 out of 10. I'm going to add to this one that my girlfriend would give it a 10 out of 10. It is currently her absolute favorite game to play. But I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. As I said, the thematic choices that hits the gameplay. I love a thematic game, and I really love this game, but I'm just not going to give it a 10 out of 10 when theme is above gameplay. I think theme and gameplay should go hand in hand. But it is still a really, really fun game. A way to gamble without actually gambling. It's great. 8 out of 10. So the question is, am I keeping it? Yes, of course I am. As I said, my girlfriend, her favorite game currently, it's something that I've brought up with my family. I can't play a lot of games with my family, but this one, they really want to play this one. And that is a massive boost to me. And that's the reason that I still have Monopolies, because I can play with my family. So this one I can play with my family, and it's not Monopoly. So I'm definitely keeping this one. It's in the collection. So that's it for this episode. I'm hoping it's a bit shorter than the previous one. I want it to be not 41 minutes, less than 20. Depends on if I talk too much. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you want to watch more of this, then go ahead and subscribe. Well, I hope to see you in the next video.